Hi everybody. It's been a long time. Welcome back to, all the people who do tune into my videos. Welcome back, and I missed you guys. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm looking down at my notes because I'm nervous. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Laurel. I'm a motivational speaker and a women's and disability rights activist. And I'm sitting down with you today and sharing my story in the hopes of helping other people who are in my situation. The type of pregnancy complications I've experienced are extremely rare. The types of pregnancy losses I've experienced are extremely rare. So if I can kind of document my journey here and then find my own answers and I can document it, then I can hopefully help someone else in the same situation find their answers as well. So that's why I'm here with you today. As you can tell from the title of this video, I was pregnant 2 times within the past year, and during both of those pregnancies, I had a subchorionic hemorrhage that killed the baby. And for those of you who don't know, a subchorionic hemorrhage is a blood clot that forms between the gestational membranes and the wall of the uterus. So the gestational membranes would be anatomy such as the uterus, the placenta, etc. So the blood clot forms between all of that and the uterine wall. And most of these hemorrhages or blood clots aren't a problem. Honestly, they're very common and they fade. Most people are diagnosed with the hemorrhages in their first trimester and they kind of bleed, and within the following weeks and months. And then because of that bleeding, the hemorrhage bleeds itself out or it reabsorbs back into the body and it goes away. And that person, the pregnant person, goes on to have a healthy pregnancy, a healthy delivery, and a healthy baby. But unfortunately, in some cases, some very rare cases, such as mine, these hemorrhages can cause complications that can be life-threatening for the pregnant person and the baby. And during my first pregnancy, the hemorrhage kind of reared its head around week 9. At that point, it roughly measured, I'm not exactly correct in this, but it roughly measured around 4.0 by 2 by 2. And unfortunately, that was the only measurement that we got of the hemorrhage because the doctors were so convinced that it would go away that they didn't really check on the hemorrhage. We didn't do any follow-up ultrasounds or anything, which I'm not entirely happy about, but unfortunately, there's not much we can do about it now. But the hemorrhage did continue to grow at a dangerous and rapid pace because at week 21 or 2021, somewhere around there, I think 21, the hemorrhage caused my water to break, which then caused my membranes to rupture, which then supposedly caused a placental abruption. And for those of you who don't know what a placental abruption is, a placental abruption is a life-threatening condition. I don't know if I said this, but I'm looking at notes. That's why I'm looking down. But placental abruption is a life-threatening condition where the placenta rips away from the wall of the uterus. And if at this point, because it's a life-threatening condition, if the baby is not taken out of the mother after this occurs, then the mother will die, and then in tandem, the baby will die with the mother. So it's very serious. And at this point in my pregnancy, they weren't sure if, because I did have that placental abruption occur, they weren't sure if that blood clot that I had was in fact a subchorionic hemorrhage, or if it actually was a very slow chronic placental abruption that developed over time, because as the placenta rips away slowly from the wall, little by little, it can cause a pool of blood to develop and continue to grow and resemble a blood clot. So they weren't sure if I actually did have a subchorionic hemorrhage or if it wasn't a subchorionic hemorrhage and it was actually a very slow placental abruption that developed over time. So they're not sure about that. But like I said, with these placental abruptions, if the baby isn't taken out of the mother, then they'll both die, the baby and the mom. Unfortunately, my labor had to be induced. And obviously my daughter, my little girl, my baby, she was too young to survive outside of the womb. So, but we had to get her out because otherwise I would die and she would die with me. So we were stuck between a rock and a hard place. And my labor was induced. And my baby, even though she was alive and well, she was born alive. But my labor was induced. I gave birth to her, and she died in my arms 2 hours after she was born, because she was too young to survive outside of the womb. And I have a whole other video on my channel that completely goes through this whole experience and details everything. So I'm not going to get into too much detail here. I'm trying not to get emotional here because I kind of want to move on because I've already covered this. But that was my first pregnancy. And my second pregnancy obviously happened a lot sooner from the point we're at now. It happened, I think, like 3 months ago that I miscarried. And during the second pregnancy, I would consider the hemorrhage to be much more aggressive. And the reason why I say that it was much more aggressive is because even though the first time around the situation was more serious in the sense that I had a placental abruption and it was more intense, I would consider this hemorrhage the second time around to be much more aggressive because it did grow so much quicker and it killed the baby faster. And it developed earlier, which isn't a good sign either. So it was much more aggressive. And this hemorrhage reared its head during the second time around, reared its head around 6 weeks. At that point, it measured roughly 2.5 by 1 by 1. And like I said, it grew extremely rapidly because just 3 weeks after that, it tripled in size. And it was measuring at 5.0 by 3 by 3. And a week and a half after that, a week and a half later, it tripled, I think tripled again, and it measured at 7.8 by 6 by 3. And that measurement was the measurement we took after we found out that the baby had died. And this hemorrhage, like I said, it's really hard to talk about all this. I'm sorry. It was much more aggressive because, like I said, it grew quicker and it killed the baby faster. And during the second time, I bled every single day. The first time around, even though it was very intense, I could tell that it was growing slower because I didn't bleed every single day. Like I would, maybe bleed twice a week and then have like a week off or 2 weeks off. But this time I bled every single day. And it was very, very intense because every time I would bleed, I'd be in pain, I'd cramp, I'd contract. I'd get contractions, and it was just a lot of blood, and it was very scary and intense. And it was more intense because this time around I knew what the outcome could look like. And like I kind of touched on just now, the bleeding, it was hard both times, but this time it was hard because, I knew exactly what the worst case scenario looked like. I knew exactly what the worst case scenario looked like. So I'd have to show up. And the first time around, it was very scary, but I was told that everything was going to be fine, that I wasn't going to lose the baby. So I wasn't as afraid the first time around, but the second time I knew what could happen. And so I had to show up to my ultrasounds and see my baby, who was just like the first time, extremely healthy. I had to see my baby in the ultrasound and see him like thriving and moving all over, so happy and healthy. And I had to look at the baby and know that like the baby was most likely going to die, and there was nothing that I could do about it. So that was very hard. And I also was like re-traumatized this time around, because obviously I should have grabbed Kleenex. Obviously the first time around it was extremely traumatic, and it took like a lot of time in therapy for me to try to get over it. I still wasn't over, you can't be over it, but I mean to a point where, you kind of see yourself healing. And during the second pregnancy, I still wasn't like healed. It hadn't even been a year. And so I was kind of like re-traumatized in the sense that I was experiencing all my trauma in the exact same way over again. And, you know, that was just completely awful. And at this point, and I should say that I lost that baby instead of giving birth, and I did have a miscarriage. I miscarried at 12 weeks with that one. And at this point, I've done pretty good with the crying, so hopefully we can keep this going and I cannot fall apart. So at this point, no one can tell me anything. No one can tell me why this is happening, why it happened twice, why it happened literally in the exact same way. If it's going to happen again, no one can tell me anything. And I'm not faulting anybody for not being able to tell me anything. I'm just saying that they can't, no one knows why this is happening. And this is very unprecedented. They've seen subchorionic hemorrhages before, but like I said, most resolve themselves. And they've seen repeat subchorionic hemorrhages in pregnancies, but it's very rare that a subchorionic hemorrhage would continue, a subchorionic hemorrhage alone would continue to end pregnancies, and not, like some people have a subchorionic hemorrhage, they miscarry because of it, and then the next pregnancy they have another one, but then the baby's okay. Like, it's very rare that, like, and the hemorrhage resolves itself. It's very rare that the hemorrhage continues to end pregnancies. So no one can tell me anything, but just based off of my own, I've tried the best I could to research on my own to try to find answers. And so I have some theories. As I kind of touched on in the beginning of this video, I am a disabled woman. I'm chronically ill. So I have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and which is like a connective tissue disorder that causes laxicity in the joints and in the muscles and the structures in the body. And I kind of have a theory that, you know, as you get older, EDS gets worse and worse. So I kind of have a theory that, like, this could be happening because of the EDS progression. Because a lot of people with EDS, myself included, have issues with, like, bleeding disorders and things like that. I do have a slight bleeding disorder. It's not horrible, and I'm told that it's most likely not the cause of these hemorrhages, but I have a theory that, you know, it might be. So the bleeding disorders might be a factor. And also people with EDS, they have, when they have children, they have, like, pelvic floor issues, weak pelvic floor, like they have laxicity in all their structures. So, like, I'm guessing that maybe this has to do with a weak pelvic floor. Or another theory that I found online, again, no merit behind this, just my own whatever. I read something somewhere that said, if the fetus has EDS, again, all of the structures are very lax and weak. So if the fetus has the EDS and the fetus has weak collagen, that weak collagen can kind of be in the sac, which can then, if the sac is weak, it can kind of cause the sac to rip away from the uterine wall. So those are just some theories that literally have no merit whatsoever, just me trying to look up whatever I can, so please don't take that seriously, but those are the theories I have. At this point, I'm not sure if pregnancy is safe for me, but I want to find out. And for those of you who don't know, I did have one successful pregnancy. I do have a 3-year-old who's the light of my life. And I would like to have another one, but like I just said, I'm not sure if pregnancy is safe for me. But I want to find out, and I'm not sure if, you know, they can prevent. Prior to me getting pregnant, I'm not sure if the hemorrhage can be prevented before I get pregnant. I'm not sure if it crops up during my pregnancy again. I'm not sure if they can resolve it during the pregnancy. They couldn't the past 2 times, but I want to find out. So I am going to Northwestern to find my answers, hopefully, because I haven't been able to find any. And I'm documenting my journey, like I've said, because there's not a lot of hope for people out there like me. And if I can find some answers in this crazy journey, and I can document it and put it up on here, then maybe I can help other people find their answers, and I can give them hope and help give them their babies. So that's why I'm here. And I want, and I'm also here because I kind of want to document my journey to kind of let anyone know who's in my situation, or anyone who has experienced any type of pregnancy loss or infant death, miscarriage, fertility issues. I kind of want to let them know that, like, somebody cares. You know, not just that they're not alone, but that someone cares. Because I feel like as women and as pregnant people, I very much feel like our pain is brushed off. We're expected to kind of be robots. Like, we're expected to just handle these losses and pop up and be okay. And I feel like people who do experience pregnancy losses, infant death, fertility issues, I feel like our grief and our trauma isn't validated by society. Our grief and our trauma isn't considered to be grief and trauma. And it's all, like, completely brushed off. And we're expected to, just like I said, be robots and pop up and go and do it. And don't complain. And if you do complain, you're stupid for complaining, because it's not an actual loss. And that's not true. And so I want to post my journey to let people in these situations know that somebody cares. My first pregnancy within this past year, the one where the placental abruption occurred, I had a little girl, and her name was Ember. And I felt like completely alone since having her. I felt like people find my pain annoying, and that, you know, no one really considers Ember a person, and no one considers Ember's death as a death. And I'm not saying nobody, a lot of people care, but the vast majority of society, you know, that's kind of how it is, and that's not fair, and it's not true, and it's not right. So I want to document my journey to let people know that you're not alone. Someone cares about you. Your trauma is trauma. Your grief is grief, and it's valid. And your children's lives meant something. They meant everything. And you're not alone. And so that's why I'm here. So thank you guys so much for watching. Can't believe I got through most of that without absolutely bawling, but thank you so much for watching. And once we start going to Northwestern, I'm going to be putting up vlogs of my journey and letting you follow along with it. So I love you guys. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one.